Hey everybody, this is Bill Straub with Modern Thirst. I'm back again for another tasting. This one's a fun one for me. It's one of my favorite easy to find pours. If you've kind of been living under a rock in the last 6 months or so, you may not know about it. If you're really tuned into the bourbon world, you probably do know about it. If you're just an average person, you may have heard something, but whatever. There were some rumblings that Knob Creek was going to discontinue their single barrel program for about a year before they brought it back online. And that worried a lot of people because it's, as far as value goes, it's a fantastic value. It's about $45. It's 120 proof, so it's not quite barrel proof, but it's really, really close. And they're all a minimum of 9 years old. However, they decided not to do that. It was either just a rumor or they found some way to support the program. But as a result, what we've seen in the last couple of months is this big rush of really old Knob Creek barrels, single barrel picks hitting the market. So I thought I'd taste a few of them for you today and just kind of talk about how they vary. Now, they're all going to be the same mash bill. It's a standard Jim Beam mash bill. They're all minimum of 9 years old. In this case, we've got an 11-year-old, and this was picked by Liquor World here in Louisville. And we have a 14-year-old called Let It Know, Let It Know, which I believe was Liquor Barn. And Total Wine has a 14-year-old as well. Again, they're all 120 proof, so there's no difference on that. No difference on the mash bill. The only difference is where these barrels specifically were in which warehouse. And if you've ever had single barrels before, you know it can be a world of difference between barrels who just sat right next to each other. So that's why we love single barrels. And when you get a private pick, you hope to find someone with a good palate who gets a good selection of barrels to pick from. They go down to Jim Beam, or Jim Beam sends them samples somewhere else. They taste them, they find the barrel they like, they proof it down to 120 proof, and you get all the bottles out of it to sell. It's a fantastic program. Lots of different distilleries have that these days, but these are some of my current favorites. Just the value to quality ratio is really, really hard to beat right now. Let's get into the tasting, because that's the good part, and I know that's why you're here. So the first one is the Liquor World barrel number 10. It is, again, 11 years old, so it was barreled in February of 2006, and it was selected in April of 2017, so it's 11 years and 2 months, give or take. Brown sugar, a little bit of graham cracker, definitely prominent barrel notes. If you get out to 11 years old, that's about right. Now, I will say I had one of these that was about 15 and a half years old, and it was definitely too old. It could just be that barrel. It could be all barrels have a little bit of a downward slope after they hit that 14, 15 year mark. I don't know. I haven't had a whole lot of Jim Beam older than 14 years. Some butterscotch and caramel. Yeah, and that nice oaky note going on there. If you like oak bourbon, not over oaked, but just oak forward, then these single barrel picks, even if they're 9 years old, are probably a pretty good deal for you. They're non-chill filtered as well, and the only other whiskey that's normally non-chill filtered in the Beam portfolio, aside from their, I think it's Prohibition, Jim Beam Prohibition style or whatever that is Booker's. So if you really want that unadulterated, non-chill filtered Jim Beam flavor, and you wanted it something more than about 90 proof, you got to go Knob Creek single barrel, and you got to go with Booker's. Brown sugar, cinnamon, a little bit of dark chocolate, a lot of oak, a lot of rye pop on the back of that, some barrel tannins. Nice long finish, very smooth finish to it. Coats the mouth, so it's a good balanced flavor front to back. All in all, really good example of the Knob Creek. So this one again is, I believe it was Liquor Barn, but it's Let It Know, Let It Know. Play on Fred No, of course. This is 14 years old. I don't know the exact days that it was barreled or bottled, but they actually put 14 year on the badge on the front of it. A lot more honey in this one. Little bit of dark red fruits. Lots of nice, kind of freshly sawn oak. Reminds me of, not that I do a lot of it, but splitting logs for campfires. Yeah, it's really nice. It's got a little bit of that dark chocolate note to it too. There's gonna be a lot of similarities between these. Obviously, they're the same mash bill, same Ultimate Whiskey, just different places in the warehouse, different barrels. Yeah, that red fruit note on this one though is really nice. Little bit of kind of a hint of caramel. Vanilla icing, cake icing. Good stuff. A little more alcohol forward on this one. You get a little bit more of that ethanol note up into the sinuses. The original sip, you get a little bit of that red fruit on the tip of the tongue. The mid palate starts getting a lot of sweetness, and you get a ton of barrel tannins on the back. Now the finish on this, again, it's probably a little bit shorter than the last one, but the rye really kicks. You get a lot of that black pepper tingle, especially on the rear palate. A little bit more bitter. It's probably the age. A little bit more oak on the finish. I think there was more oak on the palate of the first one. There's more oak on the finish of this one. Really nice. And the last one is Total Wine & More. This is a recent one. This was barreled on October 14th, 2004, and it was bottled on February 13th of 2019. So it is roughly 14 years and 4 months. So let's check out that one. Very strong vanilla notes. Light caramel and butterscotch. Some kind of a dusty chocolate brownie. A little bit of powdered sugar. Really good. It reminds me, my mother-in-law makes a cake called a Texas sheet cake, which is kind of like a really big, thin, very soft brownie chocolate cake fusion. It really smells like that on the nose here. It's really nice. I get a hint of coffee cake in there. Yeah. This is more along the baked goods line, definitely than the other two. I don't get a huge note of, I don't get a lot of ethanol on the nose, and I don't get a huge note of oak on the nose of this. That's really nice. Now, I'm looking at the three of these, and this is by far the darkest of them. Again, it's 14 years, so it's the same age as this one. It's the same proof. I don't really have much of a better explanation for it than the fact that it just picked up more color from the barrel. On the palate, this one is really nice. It's very much sweet. Again, it's back to that baked goods. There's a little bit of coffee cake, maybe a little carrot cake, with that kind of cream cheese icing as well. Like the last one, this is a little less well balanced than the first one I tasted. The bulk of the flavor on this one, you get a little burst of black pepper and the sweetness on the tip of the tongue. Very quickly, the rear palate and mid palate take over, so you really lose a lot of that on the tip of the tongue. It's probably an age thing with this. Does not have the ethanol notes that I had in the second glass, so of the two of them, I definitely prefer this one. The finish on this one is, again, medium, maybe a little bit long. I do get a lot of the tannic, kind of prickly barrel tannins on the back of the palate and on the tongue on the finish. The rye is very, very prominent on the finish on this one as well. So both of these two are fairly rye forward. All in all, they're all really nice. My favorite of them is probably the third, followed by the first, followed by the second. I'm going to try them with a splash of water. I have found, I don't normally drink bourbon with water, but I have found that these tend to do okay with just a splash of H2O. Again, if you're using tap water, you really, really need to check your municipal water and find out what's in it. I live in Louisville. We're lucky. We have some of the best tap water in the world. very clean, free of a lot of the minerals and irons that make whiskey bad. But if you're going to do that as well, you kind of want to do it at room temperature. Anything that's, if you put something cold or hot with your whiskey, you're not going to taste the whiskey. You'll numb your taste buds if it's cold. So unless you're outside drinking it on a really hot day and you just want to be refreshed, use room temperature tap water or as close to it as possible. The water too, the first one, really brings out a powdered cocoa note to this that's really nice. Long finish, not quite as powerful, not quite as bold a bourbon as the other two, but very nice. Ooh, that really makes that wood shine through. There is a lot of oak on the nose of this one with just a splash of water. A lot of sweetness came out on that. Cinnamon, cloves. Yeah, it really kind of knocked down that ethanol note. I didn't get it at all with just a splash of water. You saw it, how much I put in there. It was just a splash of it. Really, really good. I like that a lot with the splash of water. I don't know what proof I brought that down to, but not a whole lot. But it does, one of the first things you can notice if you add water to especially a high proof whiskey is it can kind of dissipate some of the alcohol characteristics, which allow you to kind of get more into the flavors of the whiskey itself as opposed to just getting hit with a bunch of ethanol. Fruits are just exploding on this one after the water. I get more oak. Still have that chocolate sheet cake and icing note on this one. Really just kind of pops the flavors a little bit. See, I feel like that kind of lengthened the finish a little bit, but it deadened a lot of those really sweet flavors on the palate that I got the first time around. I think the second one does much better with water. The first one, it's probably a toss-up. This one, I wouldn't add water to it again. It's definitely better without any water added at all. So that's really just want to go through a quick tasting of these with you. I know that a lot of folks can find these at your local liquor store no matter where you are. It's one of the easiest to find private barrel picks. If you're lucky enough that you have a good store where someone with a good palate is making their picks, you can find some really, really great value with these Knob Creek single barrels. They don't have to be this old either. Standard Knob Creek picks, including the one that Modern Thirst did a couple of years ago, are only 9 years old, and they're fantastic. They're really good. A lot of people get scared off because Jim Beam has a very distinct flavor. I've heard it described, and I've described it myself, a little bit as kind of cardboard. Some people call it yeasty. I don't get that when you get into the higher proof. So Knob Creek single barrel, Booker's, I've never had that flavor with those. I do get it with a lot of the lower proof stuff, occasionally even with 100 proof Knob Creek. But by and large, if it says Jim Beam on it, you run the chance of having that distinct flavor, which some people love and some people don't. When you get up into the higher proof stuff, I never get it. So don't be afraid of it if you just don't like Jim Beam products a whole lot. This is not the same flavor profile as a white label Jim Beam or even the black label. This is really good stuff. It's one of the best values. You can get a 120 proof 9-year-old bourbon, and it's even age stated again. Actually, I think these single barrels have always been age stated, but it's at least 9 years old, and it's $45, $48. It's under $50. If you can find another example of that, buy it up, because age statements are getting harder and harder to find. High proof is getting really, really expensive. These have maintained a pretty affordable price point for now. I have heard a lot of rumors that the prices are going to go up. So my suggestion is if you do try these, you do like them, or you already like them, and you find some single barrels you like, buy a couple of bottles of it, because it's probably going to be a lot more expensive in the very near future than it is today. Otherwise, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you do, come check us out at ModernThirst.com. Over 300 whiskeys reviewed. We're adding more all the time. We have 5 writers who do really great stuff for us. And if you like us as well, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/ModernThirst. Every little bit helps. We do this out of our own pocket, and it's not cheap to run a website and a YouTube site as well. There's a lot of equipment that goes into it and a lot of time and effort. So we really appreciate it. Thanks so much, and check us out at ModernThirst.com. Thanks a lot. Cheers.